In what I would normally call a surprise, especially with such short notice and with no rumblings, we have a bit of breaking news when it comes to digital media. And that's right. If you saw the thumbnail, and you'll see it again in a second, it looks like Deadspin is dead again. And I know that seems hard to believe, but it looks like GO Media is now parting ways with another one of its beloved brands, since, well, it's not worth all that much. All right, let's jump over to the story. And real quick, just a reminder, we are sponsored by my website. It is, of course, beachpunk.us, where you can get all of your Culture Casino merchandise, along with, all of the Beach Punk merchandise as well. And if you're looking to support me and support my channel, well, you can do it rather easily. Get yourself a hat, get yourself a mug, get yourself a water bottle, right? There's all kinds of merchandise available, including hats, as I said before, towels, you name it. Check it out. It's very much worth your time. On that note, let's talk about sports urinalism and the expiration of Deadspin before it was even old enough to drink. Founded in 2005 by Gawker Media Group, it, as far as I'm concerned, no longer exists. And it may not be truly dead, but it's a whole lot of in name only, like Sports Illustrated before it. And we'll get into those details in just a second. But let's look really quickly at what Deadspin looks like these days and what actually happened. We'll start here. The first story from, of course, I was reading it, from Variety, saying that Deadspin's entire staff laid off as GO Media sells sports news site to European startup. Well, that's all true. A European startup, I think called Firmline. Anyway, they decided to acquire a dead website. Now, the entire staff, when they say something like that, you're thinking hundreds of people. Well, no, not anymore. The Deadspin site has been sold again, and its entire staff has been laid off. I think what got sold is the brand, not necessarily the site, while it may still be preserved. But again, Deadspin, once owned by Gawker Media, became part of GO Media in 2019 after falling through a whole lot of hands. And in a memo to company staff on Monday, CEO Jim Spanfeller, who's like pictured right down there instead of Grant Gustin, he basically announced that Deadspin was sold to the European firm. Oh, that's what it is. It's Lineup, not Firmline, Lineup Publishing. Sorry, guys. With the sale of the 11-person staff of Deadspin entirely pink slipped. That's right. There were only 11 people left there anyway. And this site's been going through a lot of turmoil for quite some time. I would say the last 3 years, specifically because just how political they had become going into the last election cycle. Just imagine what it would have been like going into this one. You had editors leaving and all kinds of other problems coming out of that entity. But from a memo that was crafted today, Deadspin's new owners have made the decision not to carry over any of the site's existing staff and instead build a new team more in line with their editorial vision for the brand. Read, "We don't need their politics over here." So while the new owners plan to be reverential to Deadspin's unique voice, they plan to take a different content approach regarding the site's overall sports coverage. And that means, unfortunately, we will be parting ways with those impacted staff members who were notified earlier today. And again, it goes through kind of a few things that I mentioned, like Jezebel being shut down, the staff laid off, and then an attempt to sell it, and ultimately it ended up over at Paste Magazine. Oof, boy, they bought a dead thing. And you also have the fact that, well, all of these other sites are at risk. I would have thought that they would have parted with Kotaku. Kotaku's been not exactly hitting home runs lately and decided to dive headlong into the controversy over the story we've been covering here, Sweet Baby Inc., which was probably not wise. But let's go and take a look at some other people's perspective. In fact, let's start with CNN Business, shall we? CNN Business says Deadspin's entire staff has been laid off after the sports site was sold to a startup. And again, these story just was just a breaking story just a little while ago, so we're on top of this. But this is part of their rationale, and I'll read it. The rationale behind the decision to sell included a variety of important factors that include the buyer's editorial plans for the brand, tough competition in the sports urinalism sector, and a valuation that reflected a sizable premium from our original purchase price of the site. That last part is probably subject for debate because I don't know that they did very well when they made these acquisitions, but they're just not carrying over any of the 11 people that were there. And I don't know how else to put it, but it's being reported everywhere, including over on the New York Post, where it says lays off entire editorial staff with barely any notice. Yes. And of course, this was the site. Now, mind you, just understand, this is where this site was coming from perspective-wise. This was the site that just a few months ago was forced to apologize for accusing a young Kansas City Chiefs fan of wearing blackface. Remember that? And here it is. This story was published by the outlet and written by Karen J. Phillips. Says the NFL needs to speak out against this. By the way, this young fella is part of a tribe. So problems. And it was only half his face, but they intentionally put this here. And mind you, face paint at football games, especially Chiefs games, it's not a rare sight. So there were no terms of this deal disclosed, which means he didn't have to tell us anything, and he really didn't in his statement. But I mean, even the Daily Beast went out of their way to report on this, saying that GO Media sells off Deadspin to be entirely gutted. Well, I think that was the plan all along. I really do think this is just going to be a brand storage thing there in Europe. And I really do think that it'll just be an in-name only reference to whatever's already been published. There's really no upside here for anybody to hang on to this name reverentially or not. And I'm not here to cheer this on. I'm here to report it. I feel bad for people who lose their gigs. The problem is that oftentimes when it comes to urinalism, it's because of the inserted messaging and the editorial direction that's related to whatever they're covering. So oftentimes you get a narrative rather than the truth and not necessarily factual information. And I think a lot of people are stepping away from that right now. I do expect that since these seem to be qualified people, you'll end up with them finding another place, another outlet to work for, although those are starting to be in short supply. Perhaps another hedge fund will want another outlet with which to push whatever message they want to push. It will align with these people's thoughts and feelings, because apparently facts are now based on feelings rather than actual information, but I digress. I do know this. We've got a serious problem with the way news is reported. Sites like this are losing traction and financing options all the time. A lot of times they try to get a capital raise. They can't get it. They certainly are losing out when it comes to ad revenue. And honestly, there's just too many of them. And because of the way click-based media works and because of how Google is broken right now, a lot of these sites just don't get a second glance. You can look at all of the other sites that they have, and I mentioned Kotaku is one of them. But you can look at The Onion, those numbers are down. You can look at, what was the Jalopnik, that one, those numbers are down. You can look at AV Club. Nobody really thinks highly of them anymore. So you're really starting to see all of the brands that GEO have start to collapse. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. You've had massive amounts of layoffs, and we'll one more time reference this before we go. From the CNN business story that we cited a moment ago, in the first 3 months of 2024 alone, The Messenger has shut down BuzzFeed, cut 16% of the remaining staff, and Vice Media laid off hundreds of employees as it ceased to publish on its website. Vice Media, a digital outlet, stopped publishing on their website. Time laid off 15% of their unionized editorial staff. The Los Angeles Times cut over 20% of their newsroom staffing. And Condé Nast had staffers walk out protesting layoffs that are on the way, so we might have more coming up in the next week. And at the New York Daily News and Forbes, they both had staged walkouts. Things are changing. An erosion of support for what used to be considered mainstream or high-end digital has collapsed in on the fact that nobody is willing to support these fake narratives. Fake news, as some would call it. But hey, what do you think? Do you think we'll see more coming out of GEO Media? Do you think we'll see more layoffs and shutdowns and sales in the coming weeks? I do. I've been predicting it and tracking it over the course of the last several months. Anyway, that's it for today's breaking news. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. And as always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others. And until next time, see ya.